Warning. Money's Crazy Mind contains language that may not be suitable for all listeners. Discretion is advised, but will be completely ignored.
I'm sick of it, doing right, doing wrong. Parents pissed off every time I write a song. Smoke, crack, worship Satan, what the fuck is that? It's something funny, made for you to laugh at.
You're destroying America with your rap.
You're so full of shit, I need to call hazmat. The only way I would ever apologize
I gotta go
if
on
I
record
had
with
my
this,
face
alright?
buried
I
in your
really
sister's
do.
thighs.
Never in 39 years have I ever seen anything like
Okay, I'm sorry
It
for what
shows
it's worth,
the
but the best
fanaticism
part of you was the
of this fan
afterbirth.
base. And
If
it's
you
crazy
can't
to
take
me
a fucking joke, then go jump in the river. Na 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 na
Into the
na
return
na
of
na
Snow.
na, and I fucked your sister.
where you
You
overshadowed
can't
the
take a fucking joke, then go jump in the river. La 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 la
That it was
la
kind
la
of,
la,
for me,
and I fucked your sister.
if you want to continue to put this narrative out there, that Cody finishing the story
Mr.
What the fuck, dude?
Hey,
is
yo, he's
this
talking
big,
shit.
daunting
What the fuck
task.
is this? Hey,
And
this
Cody
fucking
has
shit.
all these
Run
mountains
your
to
mouth.
climb and
This
all
is
these
what you're
brass
gonna
rings
get.
to
Screwdriver
climb.
jam in your
And of course, we
fucking
gotta
eye.
thank our
So
official
long.
music
Thanks for
sponsor,
coming
Psych
by.
Ward,
Tell your
for the
sister
continued use
I'll be over by
of
10 with my dick in
Funny
the
Bone.
mouth and my balls on her chin. She's bobbing her head to this fucking beat. Damn, dog, man, your sister's a freak. Hey, baby, you like the Eagles? Wanna hear something?
Oh, those melodic sounds can only mean one thing. It means that it is 8 p.m. That means that it is Friday night. That means I don't know why I'm talking like the Crypt Keeper, but I am. Welcome back into the asylum, ladies and gentlemen. As I stated, it's Friday night, it's 8 p.m., and that means it's officially time for Money's Crazy Mind. What is going on, everybody? I am super duper excited for this one. I'm doing something that I have absolutely never done before. Now, I've spoken on true crime before, and normally those are cases that have already been solved. The bad guys were arrested. They were put in the prisons as they were. All of that fun stuff. This time, we're doing something slightly different. But before we get into that, you see it up there. We are on the countdown to episode 100. And ladies and gentlemen, as of right now, we are 5 episodes away. It's something that I never in all of my time doing this show, even before I got to Redline Radio, that I ever thought I would see. And I know that that's probably difficult for a lot of people to understand, but I've been humbled over my time here at Redline. I'm just moving some shit around, man. Like, I'm constantly, trying to do things to make this show better, not only from right here in the palatial spook central, you see it right down there, that's where I'm at, but also when I'm at the Growing Wings Adult Services Studios. Now, as you know, when I'm in the Growing Wings Adult Services Studios, I have my money raining down on me. But, I wanted Spook Central to look slightly different. Obviously I got the same pictures behind me. I upgraded the logo. I got the sponsors right there, but I also don't have the stuff scrolling like I do in Spook Central. And there's reason for that. I mean, yeah, I have the green screen, I have all this cool shit, but when I'm here, I want things to feel different. I want things to look different. I want it, I just want those subtle differences just to remind myself, as it were, that I'm not in the Growing Wings Adult Services Studios. We will be returning very shortly. That is not to say that the shows will be going live just yet. And I kind of want to, I'll address that later on in the show. But, when I started Money's Crazy Mind, going on 8 years ago now, when I started this, I think it was just to kind of prove to myself that I could, that I could do a podcast and things like that. And as we get ever so closer to that 100th episode, I'll be talking more about some of this stuff and all of that. But we're doing something kind of cool for episode 100. I don't want to spill the beans just yet. I kind of just barely broke the news to some of the people that are going to be involved. So give me some time to fully involve the other people that are going to be involved in it. Some of them know what episode 100 is going to be. Some of them only know a small piece of what episode 100 is going to be. And there are I should say, almost everybody that's going to be involved in episode 100 don't even know that they're going to be asked to be involved just yet. So, but episode 100 is ready to go. And I'm rambling, and I know I'm rambling. It's just because I'm excited, okay? But when I started this show damn near 8 years ago, it might even be over 8 years ago now. I know when I started the show, but I'm not sure if I've hit that 8-year mark just yet or not. I'm going to have to go back into the archive and look. But I know I'm coming up on my 3rd year anniversary with Redline, which means I should be coming up on my 8th year anniversary of Money's Crazy Mind, just in general. And when I started this thing 8 years ago, when I first started out, I had problems galore, man. But I think that that's every podcaster, because you're trying to figure out what you want to be, what your style is going to be, what your look is, and even though I want to say probably 99% of podcasters that are out there are just themselves in front of a microphone and, with a headset on and all the other fun garbage, whatever they do. Not to say that this is garbage, but, whatever they do, whatever their gimmick is, if I can steal a quote from wrestling or a phrase from wrestling, it's not really a quote. We all fall into that, and it takes time to discover who we are. And when I started this thing, I'm just like, I'll put these little videos out, they'll just be like little slideshow videos and stuff like that. Put them up on the YouTube, that is, and kind of just go from there. And then I'm like, you know what? I'll just do audio only. And, for a while that was working, and then I had this idea to start integrating the video back in and offer both, offer a video and offer audio only for both versions of audiences that take in podcasting. And obviously over the years, over the past 8 years, podcasting has grown and morphed into kind of what you see each and every day here at Redline Radio. I mean, Pat McAfee is a perfect example of that. It's just a bunch of guys hanging around talking about sports all day. Sounds like talking about balls. I'm not making fun of those guys, you know, but there's a different podcast for every niche that's out there. And when I kicked this thing off, I never in a million years anticipated that I would be where I'm at right now. I figured probably after 10 episodes or so, people would just be like, tell the fat guy to shut the fuck up. But it didn't happen that way. And, I'll be the first one to admit, man, when I first started this shit out, I wasn't getting very many views. I wasn't getting very many listens. I wasn't getting any of that stuff. But now that I have an audience and I'm here, and I'm not saying this as a negative, and it's going to kind of come out sounding that way, but it's not. Dub, I promise, this is not a negative. Being with Redline has forced me to be consistent. It forces me to try to come up with something each and every week, not only for, my sake, for the show's sake and all that, but just for the fact that I have a slot. That slot needs to be filled each and every single week. And, I do the best I can to come up with content that I think everybody wants to hear. Does every episode hit every chord? Absolutely not. But I do this show the way I want to do it. And I've come out here and I've said that millions of times, and I'm not going to keep repeating myself about it. But that's kind of just the way it is, Not every episode of every show is going to hit with everybody, especially themed podcasts kind of like this one is. The theme is, I have no theme. I talk about something different each and every week. The true crime thing has kind of been like this weird niche that I've kind of fallen into, this weird category that I'm just like, I'll just do it once a month. I'll bring in Jeremy. I'll do the shit that I do with it. And then it kind of just became what I get known for a little bit because of my unique take on some true crime cases. Rich and Stupid was never meant to be what it turned out to be. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can go back and listen to the audio archive and find out what I'm talking about and who I'm talking about. But, it turned out that this, confession after the fact, which was the original theme of that series of episodes, were people that confessed to doing crimes after the fact of their trial, where they were either acquitted or maybe the fact that they never even went to trial or whatever, profess their innocent evidence, profess their innocence for decades, maybe even. And then all of a sudden they're just like, example of probably the greatest example of Rich and Stupid that I ever gave on that show, Bob Durst. He's doing a documentary for HBO when all of a sudden he admits, while still having a live microphone on his ass, that he fucking murdered 3 people. And you're kind of sitting there watching it and you're going, did he just say what I think he just said? And then you find out, yep, he did. And then that was all law enforcement needed to sit there and go, buddy, we got your ass. Now we're putting you on trial for not 1, but 2 murders, since you already got away with one of them. And that's kind of just like how this thing has worked out. So I try to do, I pick a true crime story that I think captivated a lot of people, and I put the Money's Crazy Mind spin on it. We did it with Stephen Avery. We did it kind of with the West Memphis 3 when we talked about Jesse Miskelly and his false confession. I do want to tackle the West Memphis 3 and kind of give my take on things that happened, because a lot of things that happened in that case, you've seen happen in other cases, but the outcome was drastically different. And that's something that I think the West Memphis 3 case deserves. But we'll get into that a little bit later on. But I am beyond humbled to be this close to episode 100. And I guarantee everybody is going to love what I have in store for episode 100. I don't want to give anything away because I want it to be a surprise. But just know that very soon after Valentine's Day, or as Dr. Venkman would say, Valentine's Day. Will be the 100th episode celebration. So stay tuned, please. All right. So this week, we are doing something different with true crime than I have ever done before. And that is, we are going to be looking at an unsolved case. Now, depending on who you ask, the case was solved. But after further investigation was done, they came to realize that maybe that original and initial investigation was incomplete. And I don't mean the Backstreet Boys song. So what I have done is I have scoured the internet and I have come across some of the case files and documents involved in this unsolved case. And I want to take a look at these case files and see if we can come up with something that might help solve this case. Now, the crazy part about this whole thing is everybody knows, or at least I would hope everybody knows. Hopefully that didn't freeze, but it might have. There's this TV show out there. It used to be hosted by a dude by the name of Robert Stack called Unsolved Mysteries. And if a case makes it onto Unsolved Mysteries, then there's definitely some shenanigans and bullshit going on with it. And Netflix recently redid and rebranded Unsolved Mysteries. It doesn't have Robert Stack because unfortunately Robert Stack isn't with us anymore. But they brought back Unsolved Mysteries. And in the latest season, there was a story that not only when I was watching it, but my wife was watching it too. We kind of sat there and said, something doesn't make sense here with what they're telling us. And as the episode went on and things went further and further and further with it, all of a sudden, the shenanigans and the bullshit started becoming quite clear. And it was the very first episode of season 3. And like I said, I started diving into the internet, trying to see if I can find anything else about this case that didn't appear on the season 3 episode. Now, we're going to talk about the case, and we're going to talk about it in great detail, and we're going to break it down. I have the entire synopsis for the case here, the entire synopsis of the story that they told on Unsolved Mysteries. And then we're going to look at this piece by piece, story by, as the story goes on with the documents that I have. And I'll even show you guys what documents I have. And I'll show you guys where you can find these documents because Unsolved Mysteries and Netflix was nice enough to make them available. So the case is, and I'm going to bring it up here in just a second. The case is of a teenage girl who mysteriously ended up hit by a train. And this is the story of Tiffany Valiante. So here's what happened. High school volleyball star Tiffany Valiante was afraid of the dark. Clue number 1. Did she go on a strange 4-mile barefoot walk through an unlit forest to commit suicide by train? Or have her killers gotten away with murder? On Saturday, July 12th, it's a balmy East Coast early sunny evening in a small town of Mays Landing, New Jersey. A large gathering of family and friends celebrate 2 high school graduations. One of the graduating teens, Tiffany Valiante, 18, is relaxing with relatives by the pool, snapping selfies, and making plans for decorating her new college dorm. I'm going to bring this up. I'm not sure how easy it's going to be to read on the screen, but I'm going to bring it up. All right. So, making plans and for decorating her new college dorm room. As a smart, friendly, hardworking high school star athlete with a full scholarship to Mercy College, Tiffany, at 6'3", is widely admired for her prowess on the volleyball court. She dreams of playing volleyball in the Olympics and possibly joining the Air Force or law enforcement. At around 9:30 p.m., after an argument with her parents, a security camera in the Valiante's front yard captures Tiffany walking down her driveway into the dark. But everyone knows that Tiffany hates the dark. It's not long before her parents realize that nobody knows where Tiffany is. They call and text her phone, but she doesn't answer. Then Tiffany's cell phone is spotted lying in the grass in front of her house. And everyone knows Tiffany never goes anywhere without her phone. At 2:30 a.m., police arrive at the Valiante's house to deliver the tragic news. Tiffany's partially clothed, barefoot, mangled body has been found 4 miles away on a lonely, dark stretch of railroad track. Within hours, New Jersey authorities rule Tiffany's death a suicide. But the ruling makes no sense to her parents. The family thinks it must be a reporter's mistake. But the New Jersey Transit Police, along with the medical examiner's office, quickly confirm that Tiffany committed suicide by throwing herself in front of an unscheduled oncoming passenger train after walking barefoot for 4 miles through unlit, remote woods along a rocky train track. Their reasoning for suicide is that she was struggling with her sexual identity. But Tiffany's family and a team of passionate experts working pro bono to solve the case have discovered troubling gaps in the investigation and believes the suicide ruling is not only unfounded, but absurd. Tiffany had a myriad of short-term and long-term plans in her future. A trip to Great Adventure Park the next day, picking up a kitten for her mom's birthday at the end of the month, a graduation going away party, and the beginning of an exciting college experience. This is not the profile of someone who planned to take her own life. Tiffany's family questions the investigation into Tiffany's mysterious death. No family members were interviewed. No psychological autopsy was conducted to bolster or refute a suicide theory. No rape kit was done, and evidence from the scene was either left behind or stored in a reckless manner that caused it to mold and become unusable for DNA testing. Tiffany's family hopes that the state of New Jersey will change the manner of death from suicide to unexplained. After that, they are hoping to identify the person they believed killed her and left her body on the tracks. There is a $40,000 reward for information that helps solve the mystery of Tiffany's death. Okay, so that's kind of the story as it is. There's a lot of things that happened during this investigation that even had me going, wait a minute. The first thing is this. You see there in this picture, this is the picture from the security camera, and they played this video quite a few times throughout the episode of Unsolved Mysteries. Tiffany is very clearly there seen wearing shoes, for one. and clothes. So that because it's a night vision camera, the color's a little off, but she was wearing white jean shorts, a black t-shirt, a white headband, and white canvas tennis shoes. Now, you can clearly see that she's looking off into the distance at something, and this was one of the things that her family noticed watching the video. So in the video, you see her doing kind of, and then off in the distance, you can kind of see it. I wish I could show the video, but I can't. You see Tiffany kind of going, oh, and then you see headlights pulling into the driveway and stays kind of at the end of the driveway. They never fully pull up the driveway up to where Tiffany is. And that's the last anybody sees of her. Then, hours later, they're calling family and they're calling people to try to help find Tiffany. Her father's brother-in-law, or maybe her mother's brother-in-law, somehow related, gets the phone call and says, run over to mom's, see if she's there. So he first goes there, she's not there. Then, as he hits the train tracks, just 4 miles away from the house, he sees it lit up like Christmas with red and blue lights and everything like that. He walks up to one of the transit officers and says, hey, what's going on? And they're like, somebody jumped in front of the train. And they go, my niece is missing. Did anybody see a teenage girl anywhere around here? They ask for a description. He gives the description of what she was wearing. It kind of matches the description of the body that they have. They ask if he can identify her. Obviously, he says yes. Goes over to where the body is and immediately realizes it's Tiffany. So, obviously now, next of kin needs to be notified and everything like that. So the transit police go to the house to talk to her parents. And by that point, they basically already determined it's suicide. And they tell them, she jumped in front of the train. Now, as you hear in that story, she had just gotten a scholarship to play volleyball at college. They even had video of her signing day. So that kind of tells you how much of a star she is. And they say that the reason that she's struggling with it is because of her sexual identity. The crazy thing is, though, is just about everybody knew Tiffany's sexual identity. So they don't really go too much into detail about how she identifies. Is she bisexual, homosexual, whatever? But judging by some of the things that were said in the episode, I'm going to assume that she is homosexual. They had texts from her girlfriend and things like that. She had just dumped somebody, was kind of starting to talk to somebody new, was unsure of that relationship, so on and so forth. But as the investigation, was very quickly wrapped up, and you'll even see what I'm talking about when we start diving into some of these documents and stuff here. When we go to break, one of the things I want to do is I want to download some of the crime scene photos that I thought I downloaded but forgot to kind of show you guys what was found after the fact. And this was kind of what started boggling my mind. I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, hang on a second here. There are so many easier ways to commit suicide. And coming from, unfortunately, personal experience, generally when somebody is that depressed and their mission is to commit suicide, the end goal, or at least it was in my book and in several other people that I know that have either successfully done this or have attempted like I have, the end goal is to have somebody find you. generally, at least in my case, the person I wanted to find me was the person that did me wrong. Kind of like this is what you did. A perfect example of this, and this is a show that I think got a bad rap for the wrong reasons. Look at 13 Reasons Why. The first season. The other seasons kind of just get way far out there, but the first season to me is a perfect depiction of how someone who is deeply depressed and their end game is suicide acts and wants that discovery to happen. And I think that show is a very good depiction of that. And that's why I think it's a very I think it gets a bad rap for the wrong reasons, because I think it can help people start to recognize some of the signs of a suicidal person. And seeing the videos that the family shared and everything like that during this episode, nothing to me said that this girl was suicidal at all. Now, there is something that I want to note here that they made a very big deal about in the episode, and I definitely does think that it has something to do with this case. Tiffany, I don't remember if it was the ex-girlfriends or one of her friends or something like that. Tiffany had gotten one of their friends' credit cards and used it without their permission. And that's what caused the fight between Tiffany and her parents. And I also think that this leads into what happened to her. And I'm thinking maybe that friend, or I'll just say the person whose card she stole, maybe reached out to her via text message. I know that they said that there was a message from somebody on her phone stating that they were going to be there in X amount of time. But if I remember correctly from the episode, her parents said that that person showed up, and that's when they realized that Tiffany was missing. But somebody, and I'm thinking it's that person and several other persons, were the ones that reached out to her, picked her up, and then did whatever they did to her and threw her body in front of the train. And as we go through some of these documents here, especially the ones that were done after the initial investigation, you'll start to see what some of these other findings were and why I say the crime scene photos are damn crucial. And you can't even really consider them crime scene photos, because according to the New Jersey Transit Police, there is no crime. This person committed suicide. And the actual police department was never involved in the investigation. They left it up to the New Jersey Transit Authority because it happened on the train track. And as you heard when I read through the synopsis of the story, that train was never scheduled to be there to begin with. And you find out why when we'll start going through some of these documents. Now, this is something I have never done before. It's something that I've wanted to do, but the information has never really been available without scheduling some kind of Freedom of Information Act. So thank you to Unsolved Mysteries and Netflix for making this information available for me to be able to go through, look through this stuff, and to kind of help pinpoint a cause of what made this happen and possible suspects as to what made this happen. Now, whether they decide to change the status of her death is completely up to them. But I think after you guys see some of this information, maybe you'll come to a similar conclusion to what I came to. So, without further ado, let's take a look at some of the information that I have obtained to try to help show why not only is this still an unsolved case, but what has led family and private investigators to sit there and say something ain't kosher when it comes to the investigation into the death of Tiffany Valiante. So, some of the first page of documents that I have here is the initial toxicology report. And you see here the explanation of some of these documents. The toxicology report was negative for all major drugs and alcohol. Based on this report, she was sober at the time of her death. The initial incident report, it says Tiffany dove in front of the train. The report is dated 7/12/15 at 11:40 p.m., 40 minutes after her death. The New Jersey Transit Police report filed the day after Tiffany's death contains a narrative of police activity after the crash. The preliminary major incident report, which claims that Tiffany dove in front of the train and lists both engineers as witnesses to the incident. The major incident recorder download cover sheet. This document provides an overview of what the train's black box event recorder captured before and during the fatal accident. While the engineers say that they had rung the train's warning bell, the recorder said no bell was audible. The full New Jersey Transit Police report, the comprehensive document, again alleges that Tiffany dove in front of the train and describes the police narrative of the initial investigation. Moving on to page 2, report by an independent forensic pathologist. The letter reflects the findings of a pathologist, Dr. Donald Jason, who was hired by an attorney for Tiffany's family. Dr. Jason argues that the cause of death was undetermined. The victim may have been sleeping or already dead when hit by the train. A DNA analysis report completed by Dr. Julie A. Hennig at the request of the Valiante family details the evidence was not properly collected and stored, and says that vital pieces of evidence have no probative value due to mislabeling, poor storage, or deterioration due to exposure to the elements. The Houseman Investigation Report, Part 1. This report by retired senior medical examiner details the inconsistencies and unanswered questions in the official investigation and urges authorities to amend the cause of death from suicide to undetermined. The Houseman Investigative Report, Part 2. This part of the report focuses on the alleged inconsistent statements of witnesses and train engineers at the scene. It also notes that the gravel road parallel to the train tracks could easily accommodate a vehicle, allowing for the possibility that Tiffany's already dead body had been dumped on the tracks. The medical examiner's autopsy report is the official report that describes in detail the injuries that Tiffany sustained. Report says that the manner of death is suicide. The supplemental forensic report is a report that logs evidence that was tested for DNA. And then there is the reward poster, which we will not be looking at. There's kind of a picture of it here, and that shows that this is from the Unsolved Mystery Files. But the reward poster is kind of right there in the picture. It just states that there's a $40,000 reward for any information regarding Tiffany Valante's death. So we will jump into these case files here. We're going to start with the one that we see here. That is the first one. That's not what I'm looking for. DNA analysis, DNA, major incident, medical examiner, New Jersey. Did I not grab it? I guess I didn't grab it. That is my fault. So I'm going to have to open it here because I would like to see it. I could have sworn I opened it. Stand by while I open the toxicology report. I thought I already had it opened. Preliminary All right, so let's take a look at the toxicology report here, and I'll just read it. So you see here, the date of the toxicology report, I think, is of pretty big importance. The toxicology report was not done until the 15th. And you see there, definitely, it is Tiffany Valiante, age 18, female. The specimens submitted were the liver and stomach contents. Requested was a volatile screen and double screen analysis. So not detected were drugs and other compounds, acetaminophen. I'm not even going to try to read some of these drugs here. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger for y'all so that it's easier for you guys to read on the screen here. So not detected any drugs or compounds, and you see everything that they tested for. They test for a lot on these toxicology reports. Some of the ones that I think are of pretty interesting importance, you have ketamine, which, if this was a murder, could be used to drug her so that she is unaware of what's happening. Diazepam is another one. You got warfarin. So there's some pretty big stuff that they look for here. Propofol, propofol. So there's a lot of these that are used in some form of date rape drug. So that's kind of interesting to note there. So that was the liver results. Here's the stomach contents, and it looks like it's pretty much a mirror image of the liver as to what they were looking for. Barbital. So signature on file. Obviously, some of this stuff is blacked out. Which is fine. But you kind of see their signature here, even though the name is redacted. It would have been nice to see kind of like some explanation as to why some of these were looked for and things like that. So the next document that I kind of want to take a look at here, we'll go back to the documents. Let's take a look at this initial incident report, the preliminary report. So here's the preliminary major incident report. We'll start with that one. This one's actually a lot easier to read, since it's handwritten. And you see here that the date of the incident was July 12th, 2015 at 11 p.m. Marker point 45 on Atlantic City line. So 4 cars, locomotive shoving, train number assignment from Philadelphia 30th Street to Atlantic City. Last station passed before occurrence was Egg Harbor City. Next station scheduled, Abscon. Approximate speed of the train was 80 miles per hour. Used all appliances, headlights, horn, bell, and auxiliary lights. Weather was clear nighttime. The conductor's name is redacted. Brakeman is redacted. Location of train and impact right on top of trespasser. Actions taken by engine man, blew horn, rang bell, put train into emergency brake application. Trespasser dove right in front of train in an east to west direction. That right there, that little explanation is something that I find interesting. And here's why I say that. I want to bring myself back up on the screen here for a second. Here's why I say that. Now, if you're diving in front of a train in an attempt at suicide, you're not going to dive like you're fucking Superman flying at the screen. I'll use my little mini puffed guy here as an example. The way that they're explaining that she dove into the train. Here's the train, here's Tiffany. I know he's kind of off the screen, but that's fine. They're stating that what she did was this. However, she's coming at the train like this. So almost like she's taking a diving leap in front of the train. If it were me, and this was one of the very first things that I thought about, if I'm going to try to come at the train and get maximum impact, when you throw yourself in front of a car, you're kind of like jumping in front of the car so that you're standing in front of it so that you know that that car's not just going to run you over and keep going. You want that car to hit you so that it does maximum damage. I would think, especially since you're throwing yourself in front of a train, which is 9 million times bigger than a fucking car. You know, I'm going to use my remote here for my monitor to kind of show this. You would want the same thing. Or even if you do kind of jump at it sideways, you're going to try to turn and brace yourself for that impact, even though you want it to hit you. But if you're diving at it like this, there's the possibility that you're not going to know where you're going to land, and maybe just your arm gets hit by the train. Or maybe, like, I mean, your head could definitely be squashed like a grape. I mean, that's definitely a possibility. But I would think if you're diving into the train like this, there's a very good possibility that the impact is not going to be what you want it to be. And if you're purposely throwing yourself in front of that train, you're not going to dive in front of it. You're going to run in front of it, or you're going to try to get yourself into the best path to get the best impact. So that statement right there has always struck me as, I don't think so, man. Let's finish this document. Now, here's the other thing that kind of upsets me about this is the amount of redacting in this document. Now, I know that Netflix and Unsolved Mysteries don't really have much to do with the redaction. This is how they got it when they filed a Freedom of Information Act. So we don't know who the report was done by. We just have their conductor number and what train they were on. And the train number was listed up here as well. 6042. And actually, train number right here, 4693. So that's kind of what we see down here, that it was train 4693, and this is the conductor number. So that, and then you see here the time, 11:40 p.m., 40 minutes after the incident took place. So here we have the preliminary major incident report, and this is just a one-page thing. It kind of just reiterates, and this was from 4 minutes before the other document. So, you know, last stop before incident, Egg Harbor Station. Next scheduled stop, Absecon Station, direction south, track single. Were the following used? Headlight, yes. Horn, yes. Bell, if applicable, yes. Auxiliary lights. Weather clear. Visibility nighttime. There is no supervisor or representative at the scene. I do find that interesting. Approximate location of the train when the trespasser first observed, right on top of the trespasser. Action taken by engineer, blew the horn, rang bell, put train into emergency brake application. Actions taken by trespasser, dove in front of train, direction was east to west. The only witnesses were both engineers. If incident occurred at grade crossing, so that's not applicable. The signature of the person was redacted, but we have the date and time that this incident was done. I think we have another incident report here. The investigation report, trained person fatality. They have the girl's name here. And this is just some of the things that were found at the scene. So you see here there was no clothing, no automotive damages, things like that. They have the train number, coach number, engine number, weather, clear, hot. Chem lab, which would be your toxicology report. They're saying that that's not applicable. Status of case, investigative. Crime status active. Date officer received the complaint. Time officer received complaint. So that's interesting. 23:16, which would be 11:16 at night for those of you that may not know. Military time. Here's another little piece of information that I find interesting. Officer arrived at the scene 23:16. If that's the time that he received the complaint, how did he get there at the same time if there was nobody on duty to investigate? Time officer departed the scene was almost 6 hours later at 4:45 a.m. So last arrested, summoned, list, identify additional victims, describe perpetrator, suspect, actions taken, observing, blah, 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 blah. Michael Valiante, uncle. So here, I find this very interesting as well. Time officer received a complaint is 23:16. But if you look down here in his statement, he says it was 22:39 is when he was notified that train number 4692 headed from Atlantic City to Philadelphia was disabled, crossing in Galloway Township with 112 passengers on board. Train 4692 was awaiting the arrival of train 4693, which was scheduled to take the stranded passengers back to the Atlantic City rail terminal. Responded to Galloway to assist in the transfer of the passengers. He arrived at 22:55 and along with the train crew checked on the welfare of the passengers as we awaited the arrival of the other train. Conductor reported that 4693's crew was reporting that they had just struck a person near the Tilton Avenue, Ohio bridge, mile marker 44. They immediately requested that CCC to notify a local EMS and police officer Packer to respond to the location. Headed north along the tracks, eventually meeting 4693's crew at mile marker 45, 1.5 miles west of Genoa Avenue crossing. So, you mean to tell me that it took you almost an hour to respond? But, as was stated, when we were reading through the table of contents of the materials that I have, that the distance next to the tracks is wide enough for a car. And you see here, I headed north along the tracks, eventually meeting the crew at mile marker 45. Damn, it's that time already. We will finish this document when we come back from break. And like I said, I will grab some of the crime scene photos. We're not going to go through this whole thing. I just want to touch on some of the inconsistencies in these reports as well. We will look into the rest of the information here that I have on this case, and then I will give my theory as to what happened in this case when we come back right here on Money's Crazy Mind on Redline Radio LLC. Don't nobody go nowhere. We're going to finish talking this unsolved case where I have the case files. We'll be right back.
Oh, wow, that sounds really great. Wow, that sounds like a really good deal.
Who are you talking to?
The Northeast Ohio Ghostbusters.
Hello, Northeast Ohio Ghostbusters. What are you wearing?
Khakis?
Well, that sounds hideous.
Well, they're Ghostbusters.
All right, it's time to dive back in to the mystery of what happened to Tiffany Valiante on July 12th, 2015, where she was hit by a train. Want to give a huge thank you to all of our great sponsors. You heard more of their ads there during the break. Of course, a shout out to my guys over in the Northeast Ohio Ghostbusters. Very, very soon, we will be doing our review of the brand new Hasbro HasLab Spengler's Proton Pack as part of the Plasma series. Why are we waiting a little bit? Well, some of us haven't gotten our packs yet, and we want to play with them a little bit before we do our review. I have gotten mine, and I got to say, I am blown away by this thing, but we will talk more about that in a future episode of Money's Crazy Mind. So, while we were on break, I did go and grab those crime scene photos I was talking to you guys about. We will get into those when the time is right. Let's go back into this report here from the officer that went to the scene of Tiffany's accident or murder. And we'll definitely get into more on that as we continue here. While we were on break, I was kind of reading through this a little bit more again. And I noticed a couple of things here that I definitely off the rip want to get into. So as he approached the head of the train, the engineer stated that the train struck a female about a mile back and that the conductor was along the track area attempting to locate the victim. He continued along the track where I eventually met up with the conductor and we continued to search for the victim. Upon observing the nature and extent of the injuries to the victim, I notified CCS to cancel EMS and notify Galloway Police and the medical examiner's office. At 23:22, I established the command post at mile marker 44.8 and requested Sergeant and PO blank respond from Camden to assist on the scene. And all right, so here's something else that is very interesting about this report. Galloway Police had several units arrive at 23:30. And he assigned Galloway Police to send 2 units to assist with the passengers. So, Galloway PD was contacted about this. And they even sent units to assist with the passengers on board the other train that was stranded. 23:48, GPD reported that no one was in current need of medical attention. Officer arrived on the scene at 23:35 and took statements from the crew. No injuries were reported with any of the 56 passengers on board of the other train. And officer support for further details. A nurse practitioner and made a pronouncement at 2400 hours. Okay, so that really doesn't have anything to do with it. Medical examiner transport arrived at 03039. Medical examiner arrived on scene along with a detective at 047. So they began to transfer the train. Okay. Advised me that he was approached by a Michael Valiante at Pomona and advised that his niece Tiffany had been reported missing earlier in the evening from her home, located several miles from the location. Offered a description of his niece and the clothing that she was last seen in approximately 21:30 at the same evening. His description was a tentative match for the female victim struck by the train. Transport Post spoke with him, advised that earlier in the evening his niece had an argument with his family member and left a family gathering, that the family filed a missing persons report and positively identified the victim as his niece. CCC confirmed that was reported missing and sent a hit confirmation. All right, so that's just stating that police officers arrived at the victim residence to notify next of kin, and that the medical examiner took possession at 2:45. The remains and were cleared from the track. Detective completed processing the scene, and train traffic was cleared to reopen. That they arrived at the home address and had several PD units waiting at the scene, and at blah 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 blah. All transit police were cleared. Nothing further at that time. So, some other interesting tidbits here. They completed processing the scene, but as we'll find out as we continue to read through these documents, that may not necessarily be the case. And if they did, they didn't do a very good job. All right, so let's move on to the next document here. It's the other report from the officer, and this one's a little bit longer, so I'm going to skip over a lot of the stuff that was already talked about in the other report. So here we go. This is page 4 of a 6-page report. Basically from the other crossing where the other train was, instructed me to report to Pomona to assist with the unloading of the passengers from the disabled train onto a rescue train that had just arrived. Responded and assisted to transferring all passengers. We stayed on that train as it proceeded approximately 1 to 2 miles north. Train involved a fatality and unloaded all passengers from that train. Then proceeded south, dropping the officers off at Pomona Road where we were patrol. And he was approached by a vehicle and stated it was Valiante. He saw the train and police officers with emergency lights wanted to ask if everything was okay. Advised that a train was disabled and we were transferring passengers. That he was worried when he saw the emergency lights because his niece was missing and she had left the house after an argument. Advised that there was a person who had been struck by a train approximately a mile ahead. Asked for a description from him because the person had no identification. Provided a physical description. Gonna skip that. Contacted the sergeant who just stated the description matched the person that was struck. Valiante stated that he wanted to proceed to the scene and identify the person. Approved the identification attempt. Once on scene, positively identified as Tiffany. Transported Mike Valiante to the residence of Tiffany's parents. Were advised of the situation. Should be noted that the parents were unable to speak with officers due to their emotional state. Departed the residence at 0400 hours. So he was there for quite some time. This is the third report. Let's see if there's anything of significance here. Pretty much seems to be a lot of the same. He spoke to the conductor who provided a statement of the incident. Say that while en route, the engineer blew horn, rang bell, and put train into emergency brake application. That the only witnesses were the 2 engineers. And he spoke to the conductor, who provided a statement, say that while en route, heard the emergency call over the radio and the train going into emergency. Did not know that there was a fatal accident until later. 56 passengers on board at the time with no request for medical attention. Train crew relieved, road foreman, and released from scene. So here's the cover sheet that they spoke of earlier. Again, name is redacted. But there is something of note here. The included download is from where the engineer sounded his horn for the Cologne Road crossing until the train comes to a stop at 45.3. Train is traveling 80 miles an hour when the horn sounded and the train is placed into emergency by the engineer. There is no bell recording on the download. It's very important. Engineer stated that he did activate the bell. Train traveled 2,063 feet from the time of the emergency state. There are no exceptions noted, and the engineer was operating his train properly. So just a little something there. I know that the cover sheet comes up again a little bit later, but this is the next thing that I want to look at. Date of autopsy was 2 days after the initial incident. That's something that I think is important, and that the case was completed as the cause of death and manner based on the initial circumstances and the available information at the time. Should different information be forthcoming, the matter will be reevaluated as needed. Well, they haven't done that. Final pathological diagnosis: extensive crushing injuries covering the entire body, multiple organs recovered from the scene and collected in separate bags, fractures of all extremities, and amputation of all extremities. So we go on here, and this is basically all it states: that the identified refrigerated and unembalmed body of Tiffany, case number blah, 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 on July 14th at the Shore Medical Center. Examination was started at 1200 hours and completed at 1250. Basically, they spent 50 minutes on this autopsy. The external examination was performed with the assistance of forensic technicians. Body was received in a body bag sealed with lock, blah, 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 and attached with a tan identification tag. Identification was visually established by, and I'm guessing that that's probably her uncle, considering he's the one that stated that that's exactly who it is. Clothing and personal property: none. That will come into play in very, very soon. We're going to highlight that. And we're going to circle it. If it'll let me circle it, it will not. Okay. So the body is that of a well-developed, well-nourished, white-skinned. Body was approximately 200 pounds. Brain is lost and extruded from the cranial cavity. So we know that well, I don't want to fully go into it, but now you can see the whole thing. There is a large wound in the back of the head. A portion of hair is attached with black, which is black and covered with soft, mushy, pinkish white brain tissue. That sentence is definitely a little alarming, mainly just because it just kind of shows how far the body was into the train. There is extensive injuries to the face. Face is completely crushed, which pretty much means, I would say, it was run over by a train. Left ear is partially cut off. There are extensive injuries to the back of the head. Height is reported to be 6'3". On the blank, 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 she is a volleyball player, but because of extensive injuries, cannot be evaluated. The torso is approximately 5'6". Lower extremities are cut off and separated from the body with extensive crushing injuries of the lower abdomen. A portion of the internal organs also exploded from the body and found on scene. The lower extremity left foot is crushed with the bone sticking out from the crushed foot. Leg is also shows extensive injuries, cutting injuries, and is also cut from the body at the hip joint. So that kind of shows you where her legs were. Abdominal cavity, internal organs erupted from the body because of the crushing injuries to the chest and abdomen. There are extensive injuries noted in the abdomen and chest area. Eyes cannot be evaluated. The face is completely crushed. Extensive injuries are noted in the face and neck area. Also, sent in a container is a portion of all other organs, which are in fragments and pieces. A portion of the liver is also sent separately, and a portion of the kidney can also be identified. Cause of death is multiple traumatic injuries. Manner of death, suicide. So, they stated that they didn't do any kind of DNA or rape kit testing. However, from the sound of it, the torso is almost completely intact. Now, they may not be able to clearly state if any kind of rape or anything happened. It does state in the report that the hip area was one of the major injury areas, but nowhere in there does it state that they even tried to swab for any kind of fluids or anything like that. So that is interesting, because even if the manner of death is suicide, let's say, for the sake of argument, that Tiffany did throw herself in front of this train, the way that it's mentioned in the preliminary documents. Even if there were injuries to that area, they could still do a swab to see if there were any kind of fluids. Now, even if she did commit suicide, it could be for a reason other than the one that they gave, which was she was questioning her sexual identity. Let's say that the three people that picked her up in that car, or and I just gave something away from another report, but we'll get back into that a little bit later. Let's say the people or person who picked her up in that vehicle that is seen on the video of the security camera, which it's actually not even a security camera, it's a deer cam that her father used for hunting. What if they sexually abused her? What if they raped her? What if they did something? That's evidence that you're clearly overlooking because of the report that was given by the initial people that investigated. Okay, so that is the cover sheet. We already talked about that. So now, all right, we looked at the toxicology. We can close that. We're going to move through some of this stuff relatively quickly because I do want to show these photos, and we are quickly running out of time here. But this is the investigative report sent in by Louise Hausman, a senior medical investigator who is retired. Now, this is from almost a year later, actually a little over a year later. And it says here that since September 21st, 2016, he's had several opportunities to read reports and interviews by employees of the New Jersey Transit Police Department, the Atlantic County Prosecutor's Office, and the Regional Medical Examiner's Office, and has visited the scene where Tiffany was struck by a train. I have reviewed all photographs that were taken by investigators regarding Tiffany's death. Paul Diamano, Esquire, counsel for the family, also allowed me to review a complete copy of the file of the Regional Medical Examiner's Office, which included photographs taken the morning after the incident and photographs that were taken during the external examination. Unfortunately, most of those photographs have not been released. but I do have 14 photographs that we are going to look at. Back to the report. There are enough unanswered questions, false statements, conflicting accounts regarding this fatality, and incomplete investigative information, as well as the extremely important evidence that was discovered since the night of Tiffany's death, which leads me to the conclusion that the death certificate should be amended from suicide to undetermined. The location where Tiffany was struck is approximately 3.5 miles from her home. She left home at 21:28 hours and was struck by the train at 23:10. The medical examiner performed the view on Tiffany on July 14th. The medical examiner's determination that the manner of death was suicide appeared to be based merely on the medical investigator's data report and preliminary information provided verbally or in writing by NJT detective who attended the view. No consideration appears to have been given to Tiffany's psychological history or remoteness of the area where this barefoot 18-year-old female who feared the dark was struck by a NJT train. Although Tiffany's two uncles told Detective whoever, when they met him at the scene on July 16th, that Tiffany's death was not a suicide, no one from any agency involved in investigating her death sat down to discuss any aspect of the case with Tiffany's parents or siblings until 3 weeks after her death. The detective sat down with them only after Tiffany's headband and sneakers were found by Tiffany's mother nearly 3 miles from the scene of the event. That is the crucial line right there. The detective sat down with them only after Tiffany's headband and sneakers were found by Tiffany's mother nearly 3 miles from the scene of the event. I'm going to try to bring this up here without having to change too much. And it looks like I'm going to have to change something. So let's do this. Boom. All right. There is one of the shoes that was found at the scene of the crime. I'm going to go through some of these other pictures here. And I'm going to talk about what is interesting from this. I'm going to make a couple adjustments here before we do that. Move this up. Move this in. Actually, we'll leave that big because I think some of these other pictures might be a little bit different. Boom. All right, there we go. So this is how, I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. This is how Tiffany's shoes were found laying. And that is very clearly an aerial view. Go away, please. Well, that's just going to keep coming up. But you see there, that's obviously an aerial view. Now, for me, the most telling thing is the position of the shoes. And it's not going to... It makes them smaller. I don't want to see them smaller. Is the position of the shoes. It almost looks like she was positioned with her legs bent, and given to how tall that she was, that she might have been like leaned forward, and like this tree was something that she was bracing herself on, which could lead credence to the idea that she was sexually assaulted. So, very concerning that no one took the time to think about the positioning of the shoes. Next picture. It's another view of the shoes a little bit closer. And that stick leaning on it that could have been kicked there after she was taken out of her shoes. Seeing how loose these shoes were, it's no surprise that she was able to get out of her shoes, especially if she was being pulled. Just another close-up look of the shoe. This axe, which has blood on it, by the way, was also found near the point of impact. We'll take a look at this. This axe was found by Tiffany's uncle near the point of impact. Police took it as evidence, but it was lost, so it was unclear if it actually did play a role in Tiffany's death. This is where her headband was found. This knife was also found. It was found near the tracks where Tiffany died. It is unclear whether it played a role in her death. But very interesting that it was found near that area with the blade opened. Another view of the knife found. And this box cutter. Or another view of the knife that was found. So it's like the backside. This little piece of red plastic was found near there. A red iron-on letter A was found near Tiffany's shoes and headband. It is unclear whether they are related to her death. I would actually look into maybe the name of the school that she went to. Wilkes sweatshirt. Blue sweatshirt was found near Tiffany's shoes and headband. Her family doesn't recognize it, and no one saw her wearing it the night she died. So that could be worn by maybe one of the perpetrators that are involved in this. This is what gets me right here. Anybody that has ever taken their car in to be serviced at any kind of mechanic shop doesn't necessarily have to be a dealership. But it does look like this may not be necessarily a taken in for service vehicle, but a car that was recently purchased. These two boxes up here, and I have the mouse cursor moving so you guys can see what I'm talking about. These two boxes right here state new, which is the one that's ticked, or used. But it does have, this is probably an inventory number here. It's a 2015. Here's the make. Here's the model, which it's kind of hard to read that. But you could call around. This plastic key tag was found near Tiffany's shoes and headband. Family speculates that Tiffany may have grabbed the tag as she was struggling to escape from a car the night she died. So this, to me, is a key piece of evidence that definitely warrants changing the manner of death. You can call around to car dealerships, and probably even if you flip this over, it might even say what dealership it is. But you can give them this, and they should be able to look that number up, or it looks like there might be even another number here, and see who purchased that vehicle. And that could give you an idea of who had Tiffany in a car, or if it's even something that could be possibly related. This towel was found near the railroad tracks where Tiffany was killed. Independent testing confirms the presence of human blood from an unknown male. DNA was able to be untested properly because the sample was contaminated. And this is the location of where everything was. So Tilton Road right here, Shorter Road, car was found here, sweatshirt here, key tag 9 feet from the car, 11 feet from the sweatshirt. And then the headband was found 10 feet from the key tag, and the shoes another 10 feet from there. So here's what I think. The person wearing the sweatshirt took the sweatshirt off in an attempt to try to rape Tiffany. she's struggling, grabbed the key tag off the car, dropped it. He starts, trying to struggle with her. Her headband falls off. He gets her to this area by the tree, which we saw in the picture with the shoes. And that's where, if a sexual assault happened. And that is the last picture. So this download additional evidence is actually the file that I have. But I wanted to show those pictures because I thought that they were very interesting. I think these are just photos of Tiffany. But you can see she's definitely a tall girl. And they believe that these are the shorts that she was wearing the night she disappeared. There's the video from the security camera. This is the picture of her parents attempting to look for her after she disappeared. So in this area right here, in this wide view, this area right here is where they say that they see the headlights pull up to the driveway and then pull away. Just another picture of Tiffany. Tiffany playing volleyball. Just another picture of her. I'm trying to see if there's any. Here we go. This is one of the last things she tweeted. I probably shouldn't be, but I'm kind of content. On the day before she died, Tiffany tweeted that she was feeling content with her life. This is the train track where the incident happened. So this is the area that her family is talking about where the car is wide enough to drive here. Tilton Road is right over here. And obviously this wooded area would be where her body would come from, or possibly even over here. But they think it was on this side because the car was here. Just another picture of Tiffany. The shoes that she was wearing the night she died. And this is what she wore the night she disappeared. So it is the same shorts. So this is a picture she took the night she died. Here is the key thing right here. Her shorts have never been found. So it is my belief that whoever took Tiffany, or whoever got her to go out on that road, still has the shorts. So let's jump back into the documents here, because we are definitely getting short on time. So I just wanted to show those pictures because we are in that part of it. Urge the medical examiner to go to the scene. That the medical examiner will find it extremely difficult to believe that an 18-year-old female who would have willingly walked barefoot and alone in the dark for 2 hours, 3.5 miles from her home, until she arrived to this dark, isolated location, given the fact that all of Tiffany's family and friends knew of Tiffany's deep-seated fear of the dark. The account given by the train engineer and his apprentice to the transit police officer, contained in his supplemental investigative report, and possibly relied upon detective and medical examiner at the View, was later contradicted in their subsequent sworn statements and by the train's major incident event recorder. It took 6 days before the NJT investigators learned that the engineer's student was actually alone in the cab and the only eyewitness to this event, and was not receiving direction from the engineer until after Tiffany was struck. The student engineer was not interviewed under oath until 10 days after. His sworn statement contradicts previous accounts. Sworn statement appears to be rambling, self-serving, and inconsistent with facts observed at the scene and obtained from the black box. Mechanical data from the mirror, which is the black box, indicates that the train was likely no more than 235 feet away from Tiffany when she was first seen by the student engineer as the train was traveling at 80 miles per hour. Additionally, it was revealed that the student engineer was never tested for drugs or alcohol under the Federal Railroad Administrative Policy. At the outset of this report, I want to share with the Regional Medical's Office the conclusion of my investigation. It is highly unlikely that Tiffany, an accomplished 18-year-old female athlete, walked barefoot from her home on Tilton Road along Pomona Road to the railroad tracks and then walked over a mile alongside the tracks to where Tiffany's body came into contact with the New Jersey Transit train. The total distance from Tiffany's home to point of impact is nearly 4 miles. Weeks after the night that Tiffany was killed, her foot apparel was discovered on Tilton Road by her mother. An examination of one of Tiffany's feet, as shown in one of the photographs taken by the medical examiner's office, shows no abrasions or damage to the bottom of Tiffany's foot. Attached to this report is a photograph of the area where Tiffany allegedly walked that shows large-sized stones. Additionally, one of the photographs shows an access road for motor vehicles. If Tiffany had walked over the stones immediately adjacent to the tracks or in the dirt roadway, it is more possible or not that her feet would have shown severe damage. The one attached photograph the one attached photograph from the medical examiner's office does not show any damage whatsoever. That is a very big point. An interview with the family and friends that demonstrated that everyone knew Tiffany had a severe phobia of the dark. She would had to have walked several miles in complete darkness. Illumination from the moon was non-existent. Tiffany's phone was discovered by her father an hour to an hour and a half after Tiffany was last seen at the Valiante residence. Like most young women, Tiffany's cell phone was affixed to her body every minute of the day. She reportedly would even bring her cell phone into the shower when she was bathing. Death by train is an extremely unusual method of suicide. Did I not just say that? To be contemplated by anyone, especially a female teenager with no history of emotional instability. The loud sound of an approaching train is much more likely to invoke a flight response in a sober individual. Had Tiffany wanted to commit suicide, she could have walked in front of a car on the more heavily traveled highways of Tilton Road or Route 30. Toxicology report from the medical examiner's office was negative for drugs and alcohol. Tiffany disappeared within minutes of walking away from her home. She had been at her cousin's party across the street from her home. Individuals in a car coming from Tilton Road to the location of the party would have had many opportunities to see Tiffany walking down the street. She was a very popular young lady, and all local teenagers knew who she was. Not one person had reported seeing Tiffany, who was 6 foot 2 inches tall, walking from her home to the railroad tracks. Statements in the report of investigation by medical examiner indicate that investigator data sheet used by the medical examiner based determination of a suicide are inaccurate, unsubstantiated, and false. The train engineer has stated that the female darted out from the trees and ran right in front of the track. Descendant had been in the woods on the north side of the tracks. It was later revealed under sworn statements that the train engineer had his back turned and never witnessed the event until the student engineer had already sounded the horn, activated the emergency braking system, then yelled, "A girl jumped out." Statements attributed to her uncle and certain friends are likewise inaccurate. The data sheet report states, in part, she had gotten into some trouble the day before as well as the day of, and her friends stated that she had cut herself and was extremely upset. The uncle also stated that Tiffany had been having a lot of disagreements with her mother recently and was extremely distraught over some of the things that had happened. During my interview with Michael, he stated that in his mind, he could not get his niece on her own to the isolated location where she was struck until this. He said that the statements in the medical examiner's data sheet attributed to him are inaccurate. Additionally, there is no evidence of self-mutilation. My review of the transit police department records lead me to conclude that there were conflicting statements made to the transit investigators by lead engineer and his student apprentice at the relevant times of the questionable observation by the apprentice engineer. He was unsupervised and, in fact, is the only so-called eyewitness to the event. However, my analysis of the black box leads me to the conclusion that the observations by the apprentice engineer are not factually substantiable. There was no indication of drug or alcohol tests to the apprentice engineer. Sworn statement of the engineer was not taken until 10 days after. It is improbable that Tiffany would have been able to jump or dive a distance of 15 to 30 feet onto a built-up stone railroad road grade from a standing position. Is that not what I also said as well? Look at how smart I am. No footwear is found at the scene of the impact. They did not interview the family in a timely manner. Tiffany was extremely popular. We already realized that. Tiffany was raised as if she were a single child for 10 years by two loving parents and indulged by two older sisters, two grandmothers, and many relatives. Based on my investigation, it cannot be ruled out that Tiffany was driven or forced to walk to the location of the impact. Moreover, it cannot be ruled out that she was assaulted at a different location and placed on the tracks to hide the evidence of the crime. Professional opinion that the death of Tiffany warrants further investigation and that the manner of death should be amended by the medical examiner from suicide to undetermined. All right, we're going to go through this very quick. Inconsistent statements. Tiffany was struck by the train at 23:10. Medical examiner arrived on the scene at 0:45. And according to the RMIE, the medical examiner's investigation data sheet dated differs greatly from the statements later made by the New Jersey Transit personnel charged with the operation of the train that night. The data sheet states that we were shown an area of railroad tracks east of Cologne Avenue where the train engineer had stated that a female darted from the trees and ran in front of the train. Decedent had been found in the woods on the north side of the tracks. This account conflicts with statements given by three train personnel interviewed by them in a supplement investigation report dated. It also conflicts with a recorded statement of the engineer by the detective on July 18th and of the apprentice engineer taken by detectives and so on July 22nd. Rather than write separate accounts of the event, the conductor and the assistant conductor engineer and apprentice engineer jointly signed a handwritten preliminary incident report at the time, which states approximate location of the train where trespass reserved right on top. Actions taken by the engineer, blue horn, ring bell, Actions taken by passenger dove, and that the witnesses were both engineers. The incident report states that engineer and apprentice engineer stated they noticed a person up ahead on the tracks, instructed blank to blow horn and ring bell as he put the train into the emergency brake application. Person was struck by the head end of the train as she dove from the railroad east to west in front of an oncoming train. The conductor stated the engineer blew the horn, rang the bell, and put the train into the brake application, saying that the only witness were the two engineers. Glaring problems with the first account of the officer's report is that the recorded statement taken. All right, so we know that Did you observe the person on the tracks as you approached the tracks? No. Well, why was the reason you didn't see the person? At the time, at the same time that was going on, we were about to come up on another train and meet. They had just broke down and were going to have to rescue their people off. So we had just gotten into contact with that crew on the train to do the rescue. As soon as we figured out exactly what we were doing, uh, I I was having a job briefing with my conductor. He was right behind me in the bar. He was standing just outside of where the passenger area was. So it wasn't directly in the cab. Outside the cab, yeah, he was just outside. So that conversation goes on and on and on. So basically, what this document is stating um, is that he was able to find all of these inconsistencies in not just the initial statements, but also in the crime scene photos and the autopsy photos. So this is one of the forensics reports. New Transit Authority, Tiffany Valiante, and these were the items that were going to be tested: black T-shirt, white towel headband, a iron-on, a pair of shoes, gray sweatshirt, folding knife, reference standard from parents. So those were the items. Preliminary results for blood were negative for items stains on black T-shirt, stain on white towel. Presumptive result for blood was positive for item 2C, stain on exterior of black T-shirt. A confirmatory test for blood was not performed. Presumptive for blood was positive, stain on exterior black. However, the confirmatory result was negative. So basically, what that's saying is, on Tiffany's shirt, there was no confirmatory test, but on the other shirt, they did a confirmatory test, but it was negative, meaning that the person is not in the database. So here's the letter about the condition of the evidence that was not treated very well. Basically states that it was molded and a few other things. But here is the report by the independent examiner. And basically, this appears unnatural death was treated with the assumption that the death was suicide. Bias has negatively affected the way in which the scene was processed by all members. And it talks about the reasons why. Okay. So, based on some other information that came out during the episode, I'm bringing myself back here. It would appear that some footprints and some other things were found in the area where the shoes and other things were found that linked at least 3 other individuals to that area. Now, everything that we read here clearly states that Tiffany was not alone when she came into contact with that train. If she was almost 200 pounds, and I mean, those pictures don't show a girl to me that is that heavy, but she's also an athlete. She's also very tall and very awkward. And what I mean by that is she has very long legs, which means she's going to be top heavy. I don't think she would have just thrown herself in front of the train. And plus, with the way that they're saying that the injuries and everything happened, that shows consistency of being thrown. Exactly the way that I showed with my mini puffed here. I'm not going to throw them because I like this thing. But it clearly, to me, would be like, this is how she came into contact. My hand is just a stopgap. It's not, it would be more like this in that case. And she kind of just dropped there. Because the wheels ran over her head and part of her torso. So that is more consistent with being thrown. And it would be interesting to know if she was dead before she even hit the tracks. Now, due to the degradation of evidence and how long it took them to do an autopsy and several other things, a lot of that information probably just isn't known anymore. And since they were basically leaning on suicide to begin with, that's what they decided to roll with. And they didn't really do any other further investigating, but the parents did. They found everything but her shorts, which were, to me, probably being kept as a trophy somewhere. However, I do think that this was people that knew Tiffany, and I do think it was for the reason that I stated above, or earlier in the episode. It was about the stolen credit card. So next week, I already told you guys what's going on with that. That is my look into the investigation into the disappearance of Tiffany Valiante. If anything in this looked interesting or might have answered any kind of questions for you guys, feel free to submit a tip at unsolved.com. If that tip leads to the arrest, you're 40 grand richer, and share part of it with me, since I'm the one that showed you guys all this information. So if you guys want to learn more about the case, go ahead, watch the episode on Netflix. It's a great watch, and we're definitely going to be doing more stuff like this in the future of another case. Maybe not necessarily from this past season, but maybe even like an old case, or maybe even the podcast that they do, the audio podcast that they do, tickles my fancy, and I think it's something that we should talk about here on the show. But we're going to wrap it up for this week. This was fun, being able to look into the case evidence and things of that nature. It definitely makes me appreciate this stuff a little bit more. If you guys like this and want to see more of it, please feel free to reach out and let me know, and we will definitely do more of it. All right. Well, we're going to call it a night here, guys. Thanks so much for checking out the show this week. Until next week, where we discuss the Royal Rumble, have a week.
Money's Crazy Mind is proud to be the exclusive flagship broadcast of Nameless, Faceless Productions.
That's all, folks.